Good evening, everybody. Welcome again to Hatch Global. This week we have Jehan Chu from Hong Kong with us, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on him in a little while. First, just to give everybody the reminder of who we are. Hatch is a place for innovation, growth, and collaboration. It's a center of everything startup. Hatch is the home for hungry entrepreneurs with a vision of transforming Asia. We have opportunities for entrepreneurs to experiment freely, acquire knowledge, collaborate deeply, and thrive successfully as a community in our creative spaces. And we have built this encourage budding entrepreneurs to incubate, collaborate, and accelerate. And this is brought to you by Hatch Pakistan and Sri Lanka. We also have BYLC Ventures from Bangladesh, who are passionate young founders, supporting young founders, and providing technical support to validate product solutions, as well as providing acceleration support to include plug and play commercial space to work from, customized business training, led by successful CEO turnaround mentors. We also have today new Bangladesh Angels, who are a community of members from both individuals, including executives, VC funds, financial institution, groups of companies, and mostly from Bangladesh, as well as overseas. Seed Ventures in Pakistan, social entrepreneurship and equity development, organization that works to support and promote entrepreneurship across various landscapes and verticals, working extensively with micro enterprises, small, medium enterprises, startups, universities, and school children. ProPakistani is Pakistan's largest independent publisher for tech and business. They have over 140 million traffic to their sites annually. So welcome, Jehan Chu. Jehan is the founder and managing partner of Kenetic in Hong Kong, one of the largest and earliest blockchain technology VCs. A former developer, he started investing in cryptos in 2013, founded the Ethereum Hong Kong community, and co-founded Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong in 2014, and has invested in over 180 blockchain companies, including Ethereum, Parity, BlockFi, and Seed Stage. Jehan is a Kauffman Fellow, a former co-chair of the Hong Kong Fintech Association blockchain community, and is a co-founder and board member of SocialAlpha Foundation, a blockchain for social impact nonprofit. Jehan holds a BA from Johns Hopkins University, MA from Hong Kong University, and is a crypto advisor to Christie's Auction House and sits on director circles of San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. He's known as the man for crypto chain in Asia, and he is a go-to person for all of us as well when we want to learn a little bit more. So Jehan, welcome to South Asia, and the audience today are from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India, as well as Pakistan.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. And seems like you have a great platform here. So I'm excited to learn as much from you guys as to share a little bit about my world.
So, Jehan, I remember when you had your last, when you closed your last fund, I think it was just before the whole pandemic happened in 2019. And you said that you saw Asia as the home of blockchain, and the home of blockchain. What do you mean by that? And if you can talk a little bit about Kenetic and what you do, that would be great.
Sure. So yeah, thank you for the kind of great introduction. Basically, I got into crypto while I was an art dealer. So a lot of people in crypto have very kind of side door entrances into the space, and you find that a lot of the really early OGs or people who are very early in the space tended not to come necessarily from finance, or else they came from these kind of fringe areas like me and from the art world. But I was interested in Bitcoin because I really believed this idea that blockchain and Bitcoin was the next version of the internet. And that, where we were with Bitcoin in 2014 was where we were with the internet in like 97, like I really, or 94 actually, I really drank that Kool-Aid. And I felt that if that were true, it would be an incredible opportunity to, impact the world and be part of something, much bigger than myself. And also, of course, it'd be a great way to hopefully make some money and make some good investments. So that's kind of why I got into it. And I just love the technology. And I started to get involved as an advisor, just trying to make myself helpful in organizing events, much like this. And then I went full-time in 2016 and started Kenetic. We really started off just as investors, and then we kind of grew as the market grew. We tried to boil the ocean, doing advisory for token projects. I think we launched maybe 12 or 13 ICOs, or like helped advise them. We were doing OTC, over-the-counter trading of crypto. We were doing events. We did the first NFT conference globally called Nifty, which is really where that name comes from. So we kind of coined that moniker. And then when crypto winter came in 2019, early 2019, we, along with everybody else, lost a lot of money. And, it was just kind of that honing process. And we streamlined everything and decided to only focus on the areas that we felt comfortable in, which was high frequency trading. So we have a high frequency trading business, which means that, we have a trading team who takes market neutral strategies and automated algorithmic trading. And they've grown a lot. They're, I think, trading around $3 or $4 billion a day in crypto. But my side of the business is really just the investments. And so Kenetic, my part is really just a VC. But actually, back in 2019, we didn't actually end up raising a fund. We were raising, but we never ended up closing it. We never really ended up taking money. And we got lucky that in 2020, the market came back, and our kind of, inability to kind of really get serious about raising turned into a good thing, because we had kept doing investments. We just invested our own money. And when the market turned, we were in the fortunate position that we just didn't really need to raise money. And so we don't actually have a fund. You can think of us as like a large family office to some degree. We invest our own money, and we just constantly recycle. Every time I want to, buy something, I have to sell something. And that's kind of how we do it. We invest across the space. Our check sizes range from as little as $50,000 in token projects to as much as $10 million. Again, we invest in both equity as well as cryptocurrency and tokens. Usually we're first money into token projects, but increasingly we found really great opportunities buying from the market and working with companies almost in a kind of turnaround type of situation where we find undervalued properties and such. We also incubate companies now. I think we're incubating 3 or 4 companies in various areas. Not having a fund allows us to have a lot more flexibility in terms of how and where we spend our time. But overall, we don't really have a theme to our investing. We're interested in all of blockchain, and we're fortunate that we can have like the range to be able to invest in everything from digital assets and security tokens to decentralized finance and the future of finance, to non-fungible tokens and art, to wallets, but also things like enterprise platforms like China's BSN or blockchain-based services network. So we're really all over the place. And while it seems like it might be to something, it might look quite scattered and unfocused, but to be honest, I think that having a wide scope in blockchain at this moment is essential, because blockchain and crypto is covering so much ground of technology, whether it's AI or IoT or cyber or pretty much every layer of technology you can imagine, healthcare, identity, payments, obviously, it's all being impacted at the same time. And to be only in one vertical or only in one area, it seems like you miss out on the real key kind of driver, the real key differentiator of blockchain technology, which is interoperability. When you're investing in everything, you start to kind of digest that, oh, blockchain is about everything, and you really need to invest in all of it. So that's kind of my little spiel about Kenetic and kind of where we come from.
And it's an amazing story that from where you came to what you're doing today. But why Asia? Why do you think Asia is the market, and why do you think it's not Europe or the US? And is it because of the sheer size of the population, or the ability to change to technology fast?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Asia is the driver of blockchain and crypto. And I will say there's a caveat, which is China's recent clampdown in the past 2 weeks has really shown that cryptocurrency is pretty much dead in China. for the foreseeable future. And I'm talking like at least, 2 to 5 years. Whereas blockchain technology is probably going to find, another 10 years in Hong Kong, or sorry, in China, in the region. So we're seeing this kind of bifurcation of what Asia is going to specialize in. Previously, I would have said that Asia would be the driver of all kind of crypto and trading, because so many of the large high volume exchanges were in China. But now, as of 2 weeks ago, that's no longer going to be the case. So I will amend my statement a little bit, but I still firmly believe that Asia, because of its population, also because of its diversity, as opposed to like a huge monolith like the United States, Asia has so many different, countries and jurisdictions, and kind of arbitrages in terms of opportunity and kind of institutionalization, that it's just such an experimental place where a Singapore can really drive forward a lot of very progressive regulation facing crypto. Whereas you can see China, who is really clamping down, and you can have it all in the same mix, all in the same region. So I think that, obviously there's large economies here. And then on the other side, we see China, who's really pushing the kind of envelope as far as digital currencies, central bank digital currencies with their, ECNY, or it's called the DCEP. I mean, they are defining, what the world will think and how the world will interact with central bank digital currencies. And I think with the project that we invested in, we invested in the architect of this BSN project alongside Saudi Aramco. I think China is also doing a lot to really define how governments will actually deploy blockchain technology in an institutional and sovereign manner. So these types of dynamics, in addition to the vast amount of cryptocurrency trading and volumes, I think are two aspects which really make Asia such an exciting place to be for both blockchain and crypto for the foreseeable future, despite what's happening in China.
What are some of the exciting companies that you've invested in and you think it's going to be the next unicorn in the region?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate that we already have a bunch of unicorns in our portfolio. We're very kind of lucky that way. Our first unicorn is a company called BlockFi. So BlockFi is the world's leading crypto lender, although they're really evolving into a crypto bank. So for example, let's say you have Bitcoin and you don't want it to just sit in your wallet doing nothing. You can actually deposit it into a BlockFi interest-bearing account, and you can earn up to like sometimes up to like 4, 5, 6% interest denominated in Bitcoin. So you have this compounding effect as the price of Bitcoin increases. On the other hand, you can also borrow from them. So you can actually put your Bitcoin into a BlockFi account, and you can borrow, I think, about up to 50% of the value of the Bitcoin. And you can do this across a number of different cryptocurrencies. But really what they're evolving into is just a full service bank. They're releasing a credit card, which will basically, it's like a Visa card, but it will, you can earn Bitcoin. Instead of miles, you earn Bitcoin, which is a really attractive kind of next gen way of attracting customers. And I think, they are just, their numbers are astounding. And they have a very public, I think, intention to go public in the next, year or so. It's been reported in the press, and their last round just closed, which I believe was their E, and it was multiple billions, led by some of the largest investors in the world. On the other hand, we have kind of the emerging unicorns. There's a company called Forte, which is gaming. And what they do is they help traditional gaming companies to utilize digital assets and crypto inside of their games. So rather, maybe some of your audience has heard of a company called Dapper. Dapper is famous for creating the NBA Top Shots NFTs, these moments. But the Dapper ecosystem really relies on people to come to their blockchain. Forte is the opposite. They look at traditional centralized gaming companies and they say, we want to come to you. Let's help you figure out how to actually build crypto loops, crypto economic loops, as well as digital assets, such that your users will never know that they're using crypto. And it adds so many different transformational aspects to gaming economies, when you add crypto and digital assets. So that transformation is pretty exciting, and they're really reforming how gaming publishers work. So they, have investment from, again, some of the largest investors in the world. And I believe they are also a unicorn now, but that's a token deal. So we have many companies that are token kind of unicorns and even decacorns. But that's kind of harder to, kind of process for traditional VC. But we were lucky to invest in companies like the tokens of like FTX, which is kind of famous for having bought the rights to the Miami Heat stadium and, some top, some top gaming, esports gaming teams. We invested in Solana, which is another high performance blockchain. We invested in Polkadot, which is another cross-chain interoperable solution. And we invested in all of these, in the seed rounds. And so we saw multiple, hundreds, if not thousands of % gains in these things, things like, 50, 60, 100x from our entry price was not uncommon for some of our investments. So we've been super fortunate and lucky in our timing and some of our selection. But those are the ones that I think in our past. Going forward, I think the ones really to watch, some of the most exciting things to watch. I love talking about a company called Render. RNDR is the ticker for the token. Render is decentralized 3D graphics rendering. And what they do is they take all these gamers who have these really top-end NVIDIA gaming cards, expensive cards, but they're idle while they're sleeping. And so what Render does is that they will allow all of these gamers to rent out their cards and get paid while they're sleeping. And in return, they get paid this token, and the token and the cards will process Hollywood movies, advertising, rendering. So like Avengers Endgame or Westworld, all of these shows were rendered using the parent company's software, and eventually will be rendered through this decentralized network. So that's a publicly listed token. You can go off and buy it now. This is absolutely not investment advice, but it's an investment suggestion. I think it's a great token, and there's a lot of really good, exciting announcements coming up for them. Another one that we think is quite exciting is a company called Flare. Flare is a smart contract protocol on top of tokens like Dogecoin and Ripple and Litecoin. And it basically adds the ability to have decentralized finance and NFTs on top of these tokens, which were never built for it. It's an incredible value add protocol, which is about to launch in the next month or two. And we're super excited, and we led the last 2 rounds of investment. We're just extremely excited by it. So, and then finally, again, we invested in Red Date Technologies, which is the architect of this, Chinese BSN project. It's really like China's national blockchain initiative. So we're excited to see where that goes too. So those are maybe 3 out of, I don't know. We were at one point, I think during the last boom in April, we were investing, I think, in maybe 3 or 4 deals a week. So it was super fast kind of turnover, and we're a small team, so we were really processing a lot of deals quickly.
And if someone in South Asia had an idea in blockchain or a tech company around blockchain, what are you looking for as a VC, and what are the sort of areas that you're sort of really keen on at the moment?
It's a tough question, really. I think that there are a lot of interesting areas to think about. Decentralized finance is going to get bigger and bigger, but it's also a very crowded space. I think that eventually decentralized finance will take over all of finance, and we'll actually enter a phase called hi-fi or hybrid finance, where centralized banks, centralized institutions, whether they're payment companies or what have you, or even regular kind of retail companies, they will begin to incorporate layers and microservices of decentralized finance inside of their, centralized businesses, and will provide the customer front end. They'll provide the KYC, the know your client. They'll provide all these services and make the, DeFi space more safe and make it more familiar and consistent and regulated and safe to operate. So I think for people in South Asia, if you're thinking about different ideas, I would definitely look at DeFi, but you do have to be careful because so many things have been tried, and you really need to be very bold about how you think about DeFi. And what I would suggest to you is don't just think about decentralized finance on top of cryptocurrencies. Think about decentralized finance on top of everything, all forms of value, whether they're security tokens, whether they're NFTs, whether it's data. The kind of space of blockchain is such that you can apply these tools and these these instruments and applications on top of any layer of value that is tokenized. And in the blockchain world, most of us believe that all value will eventually be somehow tokenized, whether they're real assets or not. And so I think that if you want to be a couple steps ahead, you have to be able to see into the future about where, what is the total addressable market of tokenization? And then think about, okay, well, what type of DeFi could help me get more value out of, say, my real estate, or out of my, idle stock or shares or equities, or out of my idle data. That's really like next generation thinking. We haven't seen a whole lot of that. We've been very lucky to invest in a company called Snickerdoodle, which is making NFTs for data. So think about cookies, in your browser. They're really reimagining NFTs to kind of take that place. So what does DeFi look like on top of, say, an NFT data market? That's really where I think there's a lot of, kind of pioneering thought, but it's very early. Those markets are absolutely not there. So it's a balance of, not being too far ahead of the curve, that you can't survive for the market to catch up. Other areas that I think are quite interesting. I'm actually a really big believer in permission chains. So I have a bit of a contrarian view. So some of my peers, I do think that permission chains, semi-decentralized ledgers will form a very, very big part of the blockchain and technology ecosystem. So I think there's actually a lot of opportunity working with centralized institutions, and whether they're payment companies or logistics companies, like the most traditional boring stuff, and helping them to blockchainify their businesses and helping them bring themselves into the blockchain century. And that should be pretty good business too. So there's a lot of different areas, there's, I think, being in South Asia, you have such technical talent that even developing that kind of ability to code and familiarity with different protocols, you're at such an advantage just because there's such great talent there. If you can make it easier for the rest of the world to leverage that talent, that's also a huge kind of, I think, value add. I think it's still, some people find it hard still to kind of outsource technology to those areas because of either language or communication or time zones or culture. I think those are the very, very simple but very effective ways that you can actually help other people to reach you.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, a lot of people are listening in who are in the startup ecosystem. And if you guys have got any more questions, please do feel free to put the questions in the comments, or if you're on Facebook or YouTube, do leave a question there and the team will get it to Jehan today. So going and talking about the market a little bit, what really happened with the prices of Bitcoin in January and then last month? I mean, Bitcoin's at 32,000, it was at 60,000 months ago. And we've seen this, spikes and falls. And every person I speak to in this crypto world says, it's going to fall, but it'll go up. So what really happened, and what are your thoughts on the future of those?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you what exactly happened. All I can tell you for sure is that the market was down and then it went up, and now it's kind of back down, but still higher than before. That's all I can say. All I can say for sure about what happened. As for why, there's a lot of different theories. I mean, I do think that the massive influx and kind of that turning point where institutions and hedge funds and major investors and major personalities from Elon to Paul Tudor Jones to everybody validating Bitcoin and validating crypto had a really big impact on making it okay to invest. So now it's completely okay. It's seen as a not even cutting edge. It's just, it's a bit, on the front foot, but it's not even that, strange anymore. If anything, it's kind of weird if you don't have a view and a well-supported view on crypto. And that's a really big, reason why at the moment, I think that, Bitcoin is in this kind of land grab state. There are so many large institutional investors who are putting, 50, 100, $500 million, one after another into Bitcoin. And that's just a basic supply and demand. That is definitely driving up the price. And I think will continue to, because a lot of these investors, these, very traditional investors, it took them 10 years to get to the point where they can invest and to convince themselves they're not your normal type of, 2015, 2016, 2017 style of crypto speculators who, when the market drops, will sell. These guys and these women, they invest and they have very long horizons, and they have very, I think, long-term, investment theses on Bitcoin, where they probably can't sell for a number of years because they've already priced in the idea that there will be extreme volatility. So what that does is obviously constrain the supply a lot. And every time another person comes in with $100 million check into Bitcoin, it just, puts that away for probably the next 10 years. And you won't see those coins on the market. We will absolutely get to a point where there will be a shortage of Bitcoin, and that will, really cause the price to spike, because we haven't really seen one of these assets that so clearly has a finite number that you can count, that you can see. So that's why the price, I think, has largely gone up, and the altcoins or the alternative coins like Ethereum, et cetera, tend to follow Bitcoin for the most part, with their own little divergences. But then on the other hand, you have so much things that are kind of pushing the price down. The most recent would be the mining ban in China, as well as just continual restrictions in China. In addition, the crypto market is still small enough that it absolutely is affected by global macro dynamics in terms of the economy. And every time, the macro economy, kind of wets the bed, it forces crypto down as well. And people do come out of it on the edges. And it's fair to say that the crypto markets are still very emotional, despite the institutions coming in, because there's still not enough institutions to come that are in the space. So why does it go up? Because people are buying. Why does it go down? Because people are selling. But what we do know in crypto is that there's only a couple rules. Rule number one is that the price will always go up and down. Rule number two is that over time, the price will go up. So those of us who've been in the space and have seen 3, 4 of these kind of very violent, 50% plus drawdowns in price, it's just another season. It's like winter. When you've been through a few winters, it doesn't really bother you anymore, because spring is coming, and you get older and more mature, and your harvest gets bigger. So that's kind of what's happening.
Is your prediction still Q3, Q4 at $100,000, or does that change? Yeah. I
mean, I will say that I'm slightly less bullish. I would say all-time highs by in Q4, but I'm not sure about the 100,000, because the China thing, I would say, definitely threw me for a loop. I think threw a lot of people for a loop. They are very serious about the crackdown this time, and there's just no going back. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of gray area in their approach, and all of that value will migrate to different parts of the world in terms of mining. But for sure, it's going to put a near-term damper as all of that value and all that infrastructure and all that trading volume finds its way to other venues. That will definitely take some time, and I think that could cross over into Q1. So I would put my stake on all-time highs, but I'm not sure about the 100K mark anymore.
And people like Elon, and you use that in your explanation, that one is they're bringing credibility to the market, but are they also influencing the price going up and down with their statements? Do you think that's a fair statement to make?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the kind of things that everybody should understand about crypto is that crypto is and when Bitcoin, of course, at its center, crypto is truly a social currency. And what that means is that it's a currency which moves so quickly and is so visible, and at the same time is so connected with the digital economy and specifically the social media kind of infrastructure, that it's able to be, influenced by these mechanisms. And so the fact that when Elon says something, or when Trump, when he was kind of talking a little bit about kind of crypto or on the edges, that would really push things around because you can trade on that. And it's it's almost a sentiment driven market to some extent. And I think that, that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing because it feels like, oh, well, where's the quote unquote intrinsic value? Well, the intrinsic value is what people are willing to kind of put into it. Just as gold is. Like, gold's not worth anything if suddenly people don't have confidence in it anymore. But the good thing about it is that it allows the currency and the value to be viral, and that confidence and that belief and that spread can travel much quicker than we've seen, and much more broadly, right? There is no corner of the earth where crypto can't reach. To be fair, in China, it can't reach the places easily, but it can travel. And I think that, crypto, you have to really think of crypto as a completely different species than any other type of value system we've seen before, because of its ability to be carried, from people's lips and from Twitter feeds and from Instagram. These types of distribution channels, these viral mental distribution channels, really have an effect on the actual economy itself.
And just moving on to sort of the legitimacy of the coin, you see a lot of pump and dump schemes coming in, especially, example phase. And how do you sort of, you have thousands of coins that come out. How does your team sort of understand, okay, this is a pump and dump scheme, this is a real good one to invest in? What are the sort of criteria you look at before investing?
I can tell very quickly just from the deck whether this is a serious team or not, or at least maybe 70% of the time. That's actually a good looking, professionally designed, professionally made deck. Just shows an attention to detail, an awareness of the kind of ecosystem and what's expected, an experience level. That's, the first kind of sign. The second is the team itself. Are they people who have, a kind of validated and qualified background to be doing this? Or is it just a bunch of people that had a really good idea and wanted to give it a go? You have to have a well assembled team that hits all the marks. Third, I think it's good to have a strong awareness of the kind of competitive landscape and the overall kind of blockchain crypto landscape, because so many times I see pitch decks that are exactly the same as 15 other pitch decks that I've seen that week, and it just shows that this person or this team is doing something which is already quite saturated, and they just don't know that these other teams exist, and it's because they don't know the market. And if you don't know the market, it's hard for me to take you seriously as a team because there's so much that you need to know in order to be successful. Other than that, I mean, I think that those are the kind of basics. You can also there's an energy. You can kind of tell when someone's just trying to sell you something. They don't really have beliefs or conviction. They're just trying to, get you to buy something, and they will even pitch it as, you're gonna make a lot of money on this. And, we know all the ways to, like, kind of get the coin up and and I think that works in a bull market for kind of less sophisticated investors. And then all of that falls away in a bear market, and you really see, when the water recedes, who's wearing shorts and who's not. So yeah, I think that a lot of the kind of lessons that are common in venture and common in startups are still very, very valid in crypto. There's no secrets there. Networks, actually, I would say social networks are also very important. Again, this is a very social community and a very social industry. So having validation and having trust and warm intros matters, I would say, most of all.
What did you think of what happened in South Africa with the crypto scams with mirror trading and AfriCrypt? A lot of people are sort of nervous because of that particular incident, but it was almost $4 billion. I think it was stolen. What was your reaction, and what went wrong? Is your feeling?
I mean, on one hand, of course I feel bad for the people who lost money. On the other hand, I can only imagine that the people who lost money didn't do their homework. They kind of bought with their ears, or they were following somebody else, or they kind of fell for a get-rich-quick scheme. And I hate to say it, but if you're going to be investing, you have to be responsible about your money. And if you're not responsible about your money, and this was pretty clearly, it looked, it didn't have a whole lot of, it had a lot of flash, but not a whole lot of substance. Like the guy, and I don't know anything about this. I'd never heard of them before. Never came across my radar. And I do look at African projects. But this guy was basically living like a lifestyle on Instagram, and that's kind of what he was selling. He was selling an image, and people bought into that image. And obviously these images are pretty easy to fake in terms of the lifestyle, and that's ended up what it was. So you have to do your own homework. Like, you have to be responsible as an investor, and you can't just throw money around, throw lottery tickets around willy-nilly, because usually you lose. I mean, I feel bad for them, but at the same time, I firmly believe that it is every investor's responsibility to do your own homework. And if you don't, then you get what you get. I don't condone, these scams. I know that there will be more of them, even if it's in regulated market. Like, look at Bernie Madoff. There are so many scams, like, even in highly regulated markets, people will just fall for, things, and they don't do their homework. It's not specific to crypto. It's not only in crypto. There's scams happening every day. It's just, crypto scams tend to be quite big ones. So it's bad.
There's a question that's come in. The question is, what advice would you give the governments in South Asia on regulation on crypto, since we don't have cryptocurrency regulations already, and secondly, there aren't any cryptocurrencies that are being formed. What advice would you give them?
I would advise South Asian governments to keep an open mind and really try to grasp the opportunity that is before them. Even in Hong Kong, we have regulation coming into place, which is going to greatly restrict a lot of crypto retail activity. So we have policy guidelines that were suggested, and then they took some kind of comments from people like us in the community, and the guidelines and the actual policy that they came out with was extremely restrictive, which will really prevent a lot of retail customers from being able to trade in crypto, being able to operate retail facing businesses, and really restrict crypto activities to professional investors and professional institutions, which I think is a big mistake. So I think that this opens the door for governments in South Asia to claim and attract a lot of that flow, a lot of those startups, a lot of that business, because China is closed for business. Hong Kong is restricted. Singapore will probably benefit the most, but obviously there are really great links between Singapore and all of South Asia. And I think that thinking about that as a kind of conduit or an anchor to be thinking about a new blockchain or crypto related business is a good way. Singapore, I think, will probably be the regional leader in crypto in maybe 3 years or so, simply because regulation is forcing so much stuff there. They're the only ones who are really welcoming it and taking a very progressive stance towards it. The infrastructure that's in South Asia at the moment is still very young and immature, and it's growing, but it's nowhere near where Hong Kong and Singapore are, much less say Japan and Korea, which have very active crypto scenes. But Japan and Korea obviously tend to be slightly more isolated from the rest of Asia. They're not international enough, not really easily English speaking. So that prevents a lot. So I think that South Asia has an incredible opportunity, and the governments would do well to try and come up with reasonable regulation, which encourages experimentation and encourages growth and encourages startups to be able to operate maybe in a sandbox, or maybe with light regulation for a few years and establish itself before becoming more restrictive.
And just coming on that question as well, what are the stumbling blocks that you see across the globe for crypto, and what are the sort of global regulations do you think is needed?
I think the idea of global regulation for crypto is like the idea of any global regulation. Like, if we can't even save ourselves from climate change, it's unlikely that global crypto regulation is going to kind of come through. I think if only we pursued enforcement of kind of climate crimes with the same vigor that they seem to kind of go after financial crimes, we would probably live a lot longer. But to be honest, I think that the project that we invested in, this blockchain-based services network, this BSN, there's two aspects of it. There's the domestic China network, and there's an international network. For all of you who are kind of thinking of starting companies, I would look very deeply into this BSNI, this BSN International, because part of the strategy is to have this open source network, which facilitates interoperability between public and private chains and between public and public chains. So for example, you could have Ethereum connected to Bitcoin, connected to Polkadot, connected to Cosmos, but you could also have a permission chain like R3 or something like Hyperledger, which is really built for enterprise, all talking to each other. That's what BSN and BSNI does. But BSNI is outside of China. There's no Chinese involvement. It's intended to be an open source, open kind of governance, more open governance and transparent governance for the rest of the world. And I think that this BSN International is perfect for South Asia. It's perfect for other countries to help them skip a generation of internet technology and go directly to blockchain-based infrastructure for governments, for institutions and enterprise, even SMEs. I think that leaning into this, like seeing where the puck is going to go, this network I think has the potential to be extremely important, because it blends these elements of both public chain like Ethereum, but also where I think we are going to go, which is more regulated, more permissioned chains. This hybrid finance, but hybrid infrastructure of both public and private. That's basically what BSN International and BSN enables. And I think that the whole Belt and Road idea still lives, as an idea. And I think China is going to eventually put a lot of effort into it. So definitely research BSN. I think the website is bsnbase.io or .com. I can't remember. And learn more about it, because building on this, I think, is a really, really good strategy.
Another question's come in. What would you advise someone who's getting into crypto for the first time? What would be the platforms they should use? What is it that they need to look out for? Which coins would you get into? And basically, this is someone who's getting in first time. Is where the question's coming from.
I assume that you mean as like a retail user or as
a retail user.
Yeah, a retail user. I would say that your first stop, of course, is going to be Bitcoin. And I would say that for me, if I were going to design my own entry-level portfolio, I would probably be doing at this point, I would take a slightly more conservative stance based on where the market is. I would probably do like 60%, 70, maybe 60, as much as 70% Bitcoin. And then I would, put the other, 30 or 40% into things like Ethereum, Solana and Polkadot, and just stay at the, kind of large cap, top 10 coins. I would say if you want to, if I were to be more experimental and maybe a little bit more aggressive, if I'm young, which I'm not, and I can take more risk, I would go into things like Render, like Flare, maybe put 10% into that. But I would still really put the majority of the portfolio for myself into like Bitcoin and things that are more just solid and have like much larger market caps. I would also, if for me to design a portfolio, I would say that taking at least like a 3 to 5 year horizon where you can feel comfortable just establishing your position and then forgetting about it. You should not be day trading unless you really know what you're doing. Personally, like literally, I find that whenever I try to trade too much, I end up losing money because I can never time it right. And the markets are so volatile and so, opaque and inscrutable in some ways that you're bound to get caught on the wrong side. But again, it's like these two rules. The first rule is that the price will always go up and down. And if you're not good at knowing when it's going to go up and when it's going to go down, you're going to lose money. But on the other hand, rule number 2 is where your salvation is. It's that the price will always go up over time. So as long as you can wait it out, like don't take leverage, as long as you can wait it out and take a long-term view, say, 5+ years, it will be an incredible, I think, return, and like the types of returns that, every top tier VC wishes they could have. That's just what's available to everybody. And that's what's so refreshing about it. Anybody can build their own, outstanding portfolio with the tools that they have in front of them, with the access that they have in front of them, with the information that they have in front of them. But you have to take a long-term view. And that's really, I think, honestly, where the toughest part for most normal people is. Like, I'm super impatient myself, but for everybody else who is patient, if you are patient, you can stay patient and you can stay long-term. I believe that the crypto markets offer like literally life-changing types of economic opportunity.
Moving on to blockchain and then tokenization. You're a lover of art, and you also give a lot of advice to Christie's as well. Where do you see tokenization art going? Because there is a lot of use case coming up now in different types of environment, NFTs we spoke about, but where do you see it from your world in specifically the art circle?
Yeah, so I used to work for Sotheby's, which is one of the kind of 2 largest auction houses in the world. And I was also an art dealer for 8 years. So I really have a good sense of the art market and how it's evolved. And I still stay relatively well connected. I still collect art myself. And I've also started to collect NFTs, fine art NFTs. So for example, I bought a Warhol piece. It was one of the 5 digital works of art that Warhol made as part of a collaboration in 1985 with Commodore. And he was just practicing. So he made a bunch of his own kind of artworks, and they kind of found these works, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago on an old floppy disk, and they were able to, reconstruct them, and they were authorized by authenticated and authorized by the Warhol Foundation, and they sold by Christie. So I bought one of those 5, and, it's one of my prized possessions in my entire art collecting career. And I think that for me, this is where the real interesting stuff is. It's that intersection between technology and art. I don't think that taking regular art, paintings, etc., and making them into NFTs is interesting. And I also don't think that, every, Photoshop jockey or, Adobe Illustrator jockey or, Octane jockey who comes up with some kind of, cool animated, monkey. I don't think that's art either. I think that art is art, and it requires a high level of thought and concept and innovation. And that comes from, serious artists whose practice is art. That said, I think that what we're writing here is a new chapter of art history called digital art. And I think it actually will be led by people like Beeple, by people like an artist called Ash Thorpe. You should check out Ash Thorpe. He's also a good friend and kind of peer of Beeple. Another great artist is named Refik Anadol. That's R-E-F-I-K, Anadol, A-N-A-D-O-L. These are all amazing artists who don't really have so much of a fine art background. So they don't really come from the kind of exclusive, gallery and auction and Art Basel world. They came in, again, like through this kind of side door, but they're having a huge impact in the NFT movement. in the art world. And I think that these are really the next generation artists to watch. And maybe you can't afford, a $300,000, Beeple NFT, but there are a lot of these, artists that are out there that I think in the future will be, the Banksys and the Warhols and the Picassos of tomorrow. It's just that the medium is so different and so unrecognizable, this NFT medium, that it's going to take a while for the art world to kind of catch up and the collector world to catch up. But when they do, they will, I think, elevate a lot of these artworks to the same places that some of the top artists occupy today. And I think that will be an amazing, type of opportunity for people to get in on the ground floor. Of course, it makes it hard. It's like, well, which artists, right? I mean, I've given you a few, but there are, there are countless others that I think are out there that need to be discovered. And the challenge is that there's so much noise and there's so much bad NFT art out there that unless, again, you really do your homework and you're really dedicated to it, it's kind of hard to figure out what's what and what really has potential. So I admit it's not easy, but it's worth it. I mean, if you like it, go and buy NFTs. I mean, that's the ultimate judge, right? If you like it, if it gives you pleasure, if the price goes to zero and you're still happy to have it, then it's a good purchase.
I mean, the $70 million transaction that took place a few months ago, that was an interesting move in the art world, and that rocked the art world a little bit as well. So do you feel that tokenization in other areas is going to be larger? For example, real estate is on one side, and then people looking at, fine wines and whiskeys and other things on the other side. And I believe that, probably one of the biggest markets that's going to be there is infrastructure, which includes real estate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we call them security tokens, and a security token is basically a token, a tokenized version of a real asset or a security, a regulated instrument. And I do think that, we invested in a company called Securitize, which does exactly this, and they're the market leader in security tokens. They're invested in by some of the big largest banks in the world, like, Banco Santander and MUFJ in Japan and many others. I think that this security token movement is nothing less than the transformation of all capital markets. I think that tokenization will basically take over and it will be the norm. It will be the new kind of instrument that all types of markets operate within. And I think it'll probably happen within the next 10 to 15 years, which seems like a long time. But for the full transformation of these markets, I think we will go to tokenized. So yes, I believe that all of these things are important. Of course, real assets like art and whiskey and et cetera, because they're alternative assets, they'll probably be tokenized first. And we're already seeing a lot of this happening. The markets aren't quite there yet. It's not really widely adopted, but I think that there will be an inflection point, probably driven by regulation, probably driven by one or two key areas. Like, let's say SpaceX decides to issue a security token, then it's all over. Then, that's kind of, the kind of straw that broke the camel's back and will unleash waves and waves of companies around the world who really feel like, okay, now it's okay to do this. Because actually the regulation generally is already in place. We're not even really waiting for regulation. We're just waiting for someone to go first. And it will happen. I mean, probably will be Elon, who knows?
Yeah. There's a lot of comparison made between crypto and gold. And, the olden days of collecting gold versus now collecting crypto. Do you see a similarity in terms of times, or do you also, a lot of the traders see a correlation between crypto purchases and pricing of minerals as well? So do you see that correlation in your world as well when you're trading?
Sorry, do I see the similarities in gold and crypto?
Yes, in the way that gold was traded and what now crypto is being traded.
It's funny. Like I was never really a trader before crypto, so I'm not really as familiar with the dynamics of these kind of other assets. I'm literally crypto native in the sense that I don't have a context for a lot of these other, not a fluent context, and can't really talk about it intelligently. obviously, there are a lot of comparisons to gold. To me, I think that it's an easy comparison, but I think ultimately crypto, and especially Bitcoin, is its own beast because it has so many different dynamics. Its relationship, it's digitally native, which makes it inherently, not interoperable, but inherently interwoven with all of the different types of platforms out there, whether it's e-commerce or, again, like payment systems or access or IoT or self-driving autonomous, like AI, whatever it is, you can weave either blockchain and or crypto into it. You can't really say the same thing about gold, right? You can gold plate something. You can put gold on a dessert. You can make earrings out of gold, but that's kind of it. I mean, that's the extent of its advantages of being physically native. So while from a store of value, sure, it's kind of like gold, but that's it. That's kind of the extent of it. Crypto and Bitcoin, even Bitcoin, you can wrap Bitcoin in, say, like Flare, for example, this protocol, which I'm sure eventually they'll do. And then Bitcoin can be used for, collateral and loans, and it can be used to, power other applications. There are so many ways you can use it as a digitally native currency, and you just don't have those analogies with gold or really any other type of even fiat currencies, electronic currencies. You don't have that either. You have to kind of jump through so many hoops, and there's so much friction, and there's so many kind of gates and lack of interoperability, and in addition to the physicality. So I would say that crypto is very, very different.
Last couple of questions. One is mining with China's ban recently, as well as clamping down on mining. Where do you see mining really? And it's a necessary evil. And obviously the mining and the renewable energy, friend or foe questions always asked about that. And where do you think mining is going to be for the future?
Yeah, mining is really, at least for Bitcoin, I think is really here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. But many other protocols are, actively choosing away from proof of work, the kind of computationally expensive mining and the energy intensive mining, not only for reasons of, environment, but also for reasons of just, speed. I think that there's a lot of innovation in this space. And I think that, going forward, very few chains will choose to be proof of work. And you'll just naturally start to see an aging away from proof of work. And that will be one kind of way that the environmental impact is reduced. That said, mining is important for Bitcoin for sure. And we're going to see all the mining power that used to be concentrated in China dispersed to all the different parts of the world. And I think that will actually serve to help develop and really surface much more competitive, not just competitively priced, but much more ecologically competitive, locales for energy generation, especially in renewables, things like geo, things like, hydro, even solar to some degree. So I think that, if I had to try and find a silver lining of this China ban, it would be that it will force other mining jurisdictions to rapidly not only upgrade and expand their services, but also to become more sophisticated and address the needs of the new mining community, which absolutely takes things like, environmental and carbon footprint into consideration.
So there's another thing that you think is going to be bigger than crypto. You think Handshake is going to be bigger than crypto. Do you want to just share your thoughts on why you think that is?
Sure. Handshake is, for those of you who don't know, Handshake is decentralized domain names. So all domain names in the world currently are controlled by an organization called ICANN. And, under ICANN, you have companies like, VeriSign, which operates the .com domain. And then under them, you have the GoDaddies and, the Namecheaps of the world, which sell, domain names. But these are all centralized organizations. And, in the Web3 world, the whole kind of blockchain enabled world, it's all decentralized. There's, very few, if any, points of censorship or concentration. But domain names are an outstanding kind of anomaly where domain names are centralized. So what's the point of having all these decentralized layers, all this kind of cutting edge, efficient, censorship-free, technology, if they can just shut off the domain name? And so Handshake solves that problem. And I think that Handshake really could become bigger than Bitcoin because Bitcoin really just addresses a store of value, and maybe form of payment. But what Handshake does is it can actually control open up access to the entire blockchain-enabled internet. And I think that, Handshake token is the only thing, which allows you to either buy or update or transfer domain names. And the way that it works is that instead of buying .com, you could buy .nathan. And if you own the .nathan domain, you really own it. Nobody can take it away from you. As long as you pay your renewal fee to the protocol, you're not even paying a person or a company, you're paying a decentralized protocol. So there's no middleman. And you can actually build your own business off of that. So you could have shop.nathan, you could have, bubbles.nathan, you could have whatever you want .nathan, you could sell those second level domains. So it allows anybody to actually operate their own, ICANN in a way. And I think that, the implications of that is that you can then use these domain name spaces for NFTs even. You could wrap them as NFTs, and all the entire, possibilities are quite interesting. My kind of go-to examples that take, take Tata, right? You have .Tata. Let's say Tata was to buy their Handshake domain .Tata, and I'm sure it's already reserved. They could have, car 63 province 3, or whatever province Sri Lanka .Tata, and that would be a way to identify that particular car in a way that is persistent and accessible to anybody else. So it's this universal identity system for persons, places, and objects, both in the physical and digital realm, which is something that is pretty an interesting concept. So there's so many ways to use this idea of decentralized domain names as identity for transactions, for objects, for content and intellectual property, and even people. That's why I think it could potentially become bigger. Of course, it's a very kind of aggressive and ambitious statement, but hey, you never know.
Well, Jehan, thank you very much. It's very late for you. It's 10:30 in Hong Kong. I really appreciate you taking time and giving us your wisdom around crypto, blockchain, and really just around the global view of moving in this world. And you're absolutely right. It is the new internet of the world, and people need to get comfortable with it and learn their own way of using it in their own means. So thank you, Jehan, for taking time. I also want to thank Hatch, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, BYLC Ventures, Bangladesh Angels, Seed Ventures, and ProPakistani. And I'll leave the last words to Jehan to close off tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nathan, and thanks to Hatch and all the great kind of sponsors and partners. It's really a pleasure to be able to kind of connect with the South Asian audience, and I hope to be able to have this chance to kind of share again. And you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter at collectionist, COLLECTIONIST. If you want to kind of hear more about my views. And feel free to follow, kind of Kenetic Capital as well. So thanks again for having me on, and have a great night.
Thanks. Take care, Jehan.